Women and Spirit. There were perhaps 80 of us, members of CHI's Board of Stewardship Trustees, representatives of the founding congregations, senior leadership, staff, and family members who boarded 2 buses that December morning. We had journeyed to New York City to share in our responsibility for CHI, conduct board business, and take a day to visit Ellis Island. There, the traveling exhibit Women and Spirit would, without my knowing it that morning, bring me closer to our mission, ground me in a new spirituality for my personal and professional journey, and open my eyes to the 21st century responsibility inherent in the CHI mission statement. At the ferry station to Ellis Island, the 30-mile-per-hour frigid winds could not compete with the joyous anticipation of our visit. The ferry was tossed by the chop of the Hudson River, which challenged our bodies and spirits and brought different degrees of nausea to the group as we headed first to the Statue of Liberty, then on to Ellis Island. For a time, my wife and I braved the winds on the top deck to share the sights with many of our group. The cold slap of wind seemed to wake us from our comforts and humble us to the sacrifices of those who built our country in the past. Walking up to Ellis Island, our group split into several smaller units and began exploring. It was my first visit to Ellis Island. We discovered the story behind the more than 30 million immigrants who came to the U.S. from all across Europe and Africa. They endured hardship, were separated from loved ones, and failed 10% of the time to pass the immigration standards to enter this country. In thousands of instances, they died on this tiny island without realizing their dream of a better life. At the end of our tour, we reconvened in the 3-story Grand Hall, its quiet echoes juxtaposed with the historical din of the millions who had been there before us. As instructed earlier, we moved on to an exhibit in a 3rd-floor alcove off the Great Hall. The Women and Spirit exhibit chronicles the more than 600 congregations of women religious that came to the U.S. beginning in the early 1700s to faithfully provide education, health care, and social services. In storyboard after storyboard, the history unfolded. Most had come to the U.S. via Europe, responding to the call of the church and local bishops. These middle and upper-class women abandoned their lifestyles of comfort to provide others with care and education. I do the exhibit no justice in this brief rendition, but wish to share the awe and admiration instilled in me that day. The exhibit's photos, artifacts, and writings chronicle the story of selflessness, response, personal subjugation to community need, nurturing of orphans and those too ill to survive, hardship, living conditions, and territory challenges that would today be characterized as unbearable. Whole congregations uprooted when called, traveling thousands of miles, and tatting, baking, and sewing to raise funds for school buildings. The sisters met outbreaks of pestilence and war with a change management process that began and ended with a mere, "We need to do this." Virtually overnight, many congregations shifted from education to health care in response to the yellow fever, flu, smallpox, and other epidemics that struck their communities. Women religious nursed hundreds of thousands of wounded Civil War soldiers, were the first to integrate Catholic hospitals in the South, and responded to the high number of orphans created by the war by providing loving care and homes to those in need. We ended the day with sacred stories of the congregations of women religious that created Catholic health initiatives. Some of the stories were ironic, some were funny, and all had a deep reverence for responding to need. Their modern sacrifice, the transfer of their history, assets, and legacy to a public juridic person in order to carry Catholic health care into the 21st century, rivals those of their ancestors chronicled in the Women and Spirit exhibit. Since leaving Ellis Island, a spiritual space has opened within me, filled with sacrifice, humility, faith, and devotion to those in need. Our mission looms larger, with a vitality of meaning, a resonance of a sort, deep within my inner self, carrying me on the shoulders of those who came before. I am energized in my work by a new life, energy, and vitality that during this experience transformed words to spirit. Stephen Moore, MD, Catholic Health Initiatives, Denver, Colorado.